Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. This is Tri-Town Health Department. The date is June the 6th, 2022. And the meeting will be recorded, as Jim said. I'd like to have Jim, do you want to just go over all of the specifics of that it is being recorded and everything, just to get that down?
Yep, June 6, 2022. This is the 6 p.m. Tri-Town Boards of Health meeting pursuant to the governor's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, general law, chapter 30A, section 18. This meeting is being held via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Every effort is being made to ensure that any member of the public may access the meeting in real time via technological means. Agendas will be amended to show the link and participation code to access the meeting no sooner than 48 hours before. Recordings and/or draft proceedings of the meeting will be available on our website as soon as possible. And this meeting is being recorded, and it'll be also accessible to the CTSB website subsequently after the meeting. Go ahead, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Jim. Now, I'd like to have a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting. That is March the 3rd, 2022.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Chair, roll call vote. You got to do a roll
Okay.
call vote.
Can we have the roll? Jim, you want to record the vote, please?
Sure, Dr. Kenny,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
Dr. Ledice,
Yes.
Dr. Schwerner,
Yes.
Dr. Blagg,
Yes.
Dr. Westpfizer,
Yes.
Dr. Kearns,
Yes.
Carissa.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's unanimous, I think. Thank you, Jim. Now, Jim, do you want to, let's open up the citizen speak time. Do you want to just explain how that's going to be done?
Sure. So this agenda item is open to anyone that would like to speak. Obviously please speak your name and address for the public record and adhere to any other rules set by the chair of the boards of health. And Mr. Chair, I don't see anyone from the public other than Lee Board of Selectmen, Bob Jones, and Clarence Fanto from the Berkshire Eagle. Everyone else is either staff or board members. So if you want, you can.
So I'm understanding you correctly. We don't have anybody raising their hand to speak at this point.
I don't see anybody. You can always revisit it further along if someone joins in later.
Is there anybody there that you can identify that isn't communicating with us at all?
No, I have the participant panel listed, and there's no phone numbers. There's no one else that I don't recognize.
Okay, so let's move on to the next item of business, which is an open meeting law complaint from April 16th, 2022. Jim, do you want to review that for the board, please?
Sure. As the board knows, we received another open meeting law complaint April 16th, 2022 by Gary Wiley. I did send out the packet to all the Board of Health members. If you just raise your hand that you acknowledge receipt of that. I did send it out a few weeks ago. And so initially, typically what we have to do is, according to the Attorney General laws, anytime there's an open meeting law violation complaint, the board has 14 days to issue a formal response. And since the Tri-Town Boards of Health typically only meets quarterly, we didn't have a time where we were going to be scheduled to meet compliance with that timeline. So we actually worked with Stockbridge Town Council, who has been assisting us recently with a couple of the open meeting law violations. And we requested an extension from the Attorney General's office to right around now.
Can I clarify something there, Jim? You
Sure.
said open meeting law violations. They were
Complaint.
Open meeting law violation complaints.
Complaint. Yeah.
None of them were found to be open meeting law
No.
violations
Sorry.
you're speaking of now.
Yeah. And so we got the extension, which we now have met. And unless, Mr. Chair, any of the board members have specific questions related to the alleged complaint, I would simply just ask for a motion through the chair to refer this back to our town council for a formal response.
So I'm going to ask the board if you have any specific questions about this complaint or any discussion you'd like to have.
No.
No.
Oh,
Can I have a motion to forward the complaint to the town council and let the town council handle a complaint again?
I make the motion.
Second.
We'll do a roll call vote. I'll start that again. Diane,
Yes.
Dr. Kenny,
Yes.
Dr. Ludice,
Yes.
Dr. Schwerner,
Yes.
Dr. Blagg,
Yes.
Dr. Kearns,
Yes.
Dr. Westpizer,
Yes.
and Carissa.
Yes.
Okay, well, Mr. Chair, we do have someone that joined in, Claire Leahy. I wasn't sure if she wanted to go back to the citizen speak unless Claire, if you know how to raise your hand, you can go down to your panel, hit the reaction button, and you'll see raise hand if you're interested in making a comment during citizen speak time. If not, if you're just here to listen, let me know.
So Claire, we'd like to have, if you didn't understand it, we'd like to have the speak time done so we can get on with our business without interruption as time goes along. So you're free to speak up now if you'd like to say something. Is there something you would like to say, or do you just want to listen? If you don't say anything, I'll assume
Sorry,
that.
I just got unmuted and I do not want to speak up. I'm sorry. I just wanted to listen. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome anyway, so thank you for coming.
Okay, thanks, Claire. All right,
Bring your
Mr.
tennis
Chair.
racket- Did you bring your tennis racket with you, Claire? I don't know. Let's. Okay, so the next item is a presentation by Select Board Lee Selectman Robert Jones and Tim Gray. Basically to request a future discussion and educational session regarding the PCB problem in Berkshire County, and specifically, I believe, with respect to Lennox. Bob, would you like to say something about that now?
Yeah, I'll start now. I apologize. Tim and I went down to your offices thinking that the meeting would be there, and we realized it's a Zoom meeting. And so Tim is trying to get on right now. But basically, HRI has had a success in an appeal of things in the past by using the local boards of health. And I'm going to read to you very briefly what Tim has written, and we were going to do this as a handout. But the Housatonic River Initiative is a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated. Well, you pretty much know what HRI is, I think. Is everybody familiar with HRI?
You want to explain that, Bob, for everybody?
Well, HRI is a private nonprofit that's been monitoring and active in the PCB problem in the Housatonic River for the last several decades. So they are affiliated with scientists, with geologists, with experts who have monitored the Housatonic River very closely and who have monitored the proposed PCB dump for some time now. And we are initiating a number of efforts to try to fight this dump, and the Tri-Town Board of Health is just one of those. Basically, HRI, representing and on behalf of its members, residents of Lee, Massachusetts, and adjacent communities, they're going to formally request through the communication we'll send to you, and at this next meeting, we're going to have some experts there, that the Board of Health of Lee hold adjudicatory hearings to determine whether a proposed dump for burying possibly millions of tons of polychlorinated biphenyls, PCBs, within the confines of the town of Lee present a health impact to the residents of Lee, and to ban the installation of the proposed dump in Lee if the Board of Health concludes that locating the proposed dump on Lee, in Lee, will impact the health of Lee's residents. Now, I'm not going to get into it. I wish Tim was here, but what we'd like to do is set up a meeting with you, and perhaps your next meeting, to bring in 2 or 3 of these experts, including a geologist. I don't have his name here in front of me. Tim has it, who has worked for both GE and the EPA and has received commendations for the work that he's done. And this geologist has taken a look at the proposed dump site and has concluded, in fact, Tim can tell you better than I, but he's concluded, he's a professor, and he said, if I was going to talk to my students about the worst possible conditions for a dump site, I would use the Woods Pond site as an example. So what we'd like to do is to be put on the agenda. I'm hoping you're going to be meeting in person perhaps by the next meeting, but we could certainly do it with Zoom with these individuals. But it may be far more effective to do it in person if that was possible. And I'm just wondering whether you would be open to hearing from Tim Gray of HRI and a few of his 2 or 3 of his experts to show you for your consideration how you could possibly become involved in taking a look at this as a potential health crisis for Lee, not only for Lee, but for the Tri-Town and actually for all of Southern Berkshire County. Is that something this board may be interested in doing?
Well, thank you. Thank you for bringing that up, Bob. Would anybody on the board like to comment about that now?
Bob, I have a question. What is, do you know if there's an item of interest or a path that you would like the boards to take after receiving this information?
Yeah, we'd like you to put us on your agenda so that we could address the board as a whole with our experts. And actually he is sent, I think he sent registered, I think Tim has sent registered letters to the Board of Health so that you all have copies of it. So you can, you'll have time to review it and then be able to at least hear out the people who are going to put forth this argument. And we're not asking you for a response tonight, obviously, but we are asking you for the opportunity to hear us out to see if this is something that the board would want to become involved in.
I don't know if you understood Dr. Westpfeiser's question. Well, Dr. Westpfeiser, did you have your question answered? It didn't seem like that answered the
No,
question.
my question is, upon receiving this information from the experts, is there a path that you're suggesting, you're hoping that we take once we're educated?
Yes, and I will leave it to those experts to make that clear. But they will spell out a clearly defined path that Tri-Town Health can take if you choose to do so, to take this on. But they will spell it all out for you. We're only asking for your time and your consideration in addressing this. As I say, we've got a lot of irons in the fire, but this is a big one. And I think that you may find that this is the opportunity for you to actually weigh in on the proposed PCB dump in an effective way.
Okay. Now, is one of these experts the person you spoke to me about? I remember meeting with you and Tim at your request. There was a professor or an academically engaged attorney, I think, who had something to do with a similar but dissimilar situation in one of the Greenfield area communities.
That's
Isn't that
correct.
right?
And he would be one of those who would be addressing you. Yes.
Oh, okay. I was under the understanding that he was going to contact me and or the board.
Well, I guess this is the way that he wants to contact you.
Okay,
And his name is Cristobal,
that's right. Yeah.
and he's very good at what he does. He's an expert, and he has agreed to take this on for HRI. This is a very, very significant problem that we have here. Significant not only to the people in Lee and the Berkshires, but to the experts who are watching this happen in, quite frankly, in disbelief. But this is a possible remedy, at least in partiality, for dealing with this. But we're just asking you that you hear us out.
Bob, you said he had a similar discussion in Greenfield?
Similar, but also different. There was a situation where a Board of Health successfully held up or was influential in canceling or moving a pipeline that was going in through using some of the language within the energy related federal regulations. This would be different. This would be under the environmental regulations, but I'm under the understanding that this attorney Cristobal has some ideas about how boards of health may have jurisdiction. One of the big problems with this whole area is federal authority usurps our ability to address actions and to have actually legal standing in these areas. But they had a example using the energy and pipeline oriented example that may cross over to this avenue. I would suggest, Bob, Mr. Jones, that we get, I know there was a case file available that described this case, and certainly to make their presentations that much more effective, for us, it would be good to have some information ahead of time if that's possible. I'm not.
That is what you're going to be receiving. I think Tim
Okay.
said today he sent a registered communication to the board.
Okay, good.
You'll receive that, and there's quite a bit of that legal language is in there, and it in fact states case law and individual cases that where this has been effective.
Okay, good.
So
Does anybody else on the board have something to ask or a comment to make, please? Diane?
I see no harm in allowing them to at least do a presentation to educate us.
Okay. Any other comments? Jim?
More education is better for all of us.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, my only question is, Bob, Mr. Jones, it's a lot of Bobs on here. At the beginning, you said something about like a hearing, the meeting should be like a hearing. Are you thinking more like just a presentation?
no, this would be a presentation.
Yeah, because I think there's a difference between the two.
Yes.
Structurally, I think, and legally, I think, the board has authority to put any type of public expert presenters on any Board of Health agenda. We did something similar in Lenox with the cell tower from a professor, I think, from University of New Hampshire. And, and we're not really sure where the open meeting law is going to be come that time in July or August. It may be extended, it may be in person, but we can figure that out when the time presents itself. If we do end up with a Zoom presentation or some type of hybrid, we'll probably want to engage CTSB, because that'll allow up to 500 people to participate, where the Tri-Town account only has up to 100. But we can, once we get the packets, and I think what I'll probably suggest to the boards, I don't know where those packets were sent to, but they typically will come to us. But once we get them, we'll make sure we make copies for everybody. we can post it on the Tri-Town site, so the public has access. That's if, you know, I'll let the board get copies of everything first, and then really have them get back to me if there's any specific one-on-one questions. Because I think the goal would be to get as much information leading up to this presentation, so it's really effective when it happens.
Well,
So this is Tim.
Tim is here.
I am here. I'm finally here.
Well,
Can I
Well-
answer anything? There is, I don't know if Bob told you that you HRI is the person that is going to take on you know, trying to pull this the hearing that we would like to do. See, under Massachusetts General Law 111, see, I was going to pass all this stuff out tonight, but now I can't pass it out, but I can drop it off at the office. But there's a letter in the mail to you, which you'll get tomorrow, actually. And what HRI is asking for is that we would like to do a hearing at some point. It will be, we are working with a lawyer named Cristobal Boniface. He's worked with us for-
Mr. Gray, I'm going to interrupt you for a minute, and thank you very much for telling us, but I think that Mr. Jones has already done a very good job of clarifying all of that for us.
Oh, okay.
Sorry you were late. No, thank you very much. So I think that is being redundant. Mr. Jones, do you agree with me on that? That what Tim was just saying was really going over the same thing that you'd already clearly described for us?
Yeah, I think so. Just to be clear in terms of whether it's a hearing or a presentation, Tim, I had said to the board that initially what we'd like to do is a presentation of what we want to do before we do a formal hearing, to make sure that they fully understand what they're getting involved in, if they want to get involved in it. And then we can move forward there to a more formal hearing. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm just saying that our goal at HRI is to have the Board of Health do a hearing at some point on this issue, because they are the only people in town that has power under Massachusetts Law 11, you know, so that's what we would like to get to it. If they'd like more presentation, I'm very glad to pull it together, and we can answer anything they'd like, and in any way, shape, or form. But
Good, okay,
you know, the expert witnesses that I'm lining up I'm lining up for the hearing because they cost money to get over here, you know, and I just want to let you guys know too, is Cristobal, you need to understand this, that Cristobal Boniface, this lawyer, will represent the Board of Health and the town if anything comes of this hearing that doesn't work out exactly right.
Well, we're not speaking of, excuse me, Tim, we decided, I think, before you actually began to speak, and please, if any of the board members heard it differently than I did, that Mr. Jones was suggesting we would have an educational presentation to start with and not a hearing. And at the educational presentation, I think it would be appropriate for you to be describing some of the things you're talking about what might be the outcome of a hearing.
Yeah, okay.
Does everybody agree with me on that? I thought that's what we had agreed upon. And I know that Tim came in a little late, and I can understand his energy about this, but I think that Mr. Jones really did put it into a very clear position. And I think that there wasn't any further discussion about that. It was pretty, nobody objected to it or anything like that. I think the hearing idea is a second idea and needs to be, at least we were thinking, at least I understood that this would be something that might come out of the educational session.
Okay, well, I just want to let you know that there is a letter coming to the Board of Health tomorrow and to the General Electric Company tomorrow about this issue, because we're trying to get on board, getting this going.
Tim, okay, Tim, listen to me. I very much appreciate that. Mr. Jones has already gone over all of that. So what I want you to understand is it's a privilege for us to be part of an educational process related to this community thing of community importance. It's a privilege for us, but you have to understand, I won't let you waste our time by going over things which we already clearly understood. Okay, that's something that I want you to understand. It's a privilege for us to be part of the educational process here. I want you to understand personally, I think it's a privilege, but I also don't want to waste the board members' time by going over something just because you came in late. I'm sure you wouldn't be saying a lot of these things if you hadn't been late. I'm sorry about the technological issue there, but I think that Bob Jones has covered this pretty clearly. And I think that what you're saying now is simply being redundant or is to be brought up at the educational session. Now, if Bob Jones disagrees with me on this, please, Bob, speak up.
If I may, Charlie, I don't think Tim is being redundant. My suggestion was, rather than have you agree to a hearing per se, was to give a presentation to the board so they know what they're getting into before we actually do the hearing with Tim's experts. And you'll be, as Tim
So
says,
is
you're
Tim
gonna be-
asking something different from that then? That's what I'm trying to get at here.
No,
Are you wanting us to have a
no.
hearing the next time? Do you want us, are you asking us to have a hearing?
Not the next time. No, there will be a hearing. We hope that you will decide to do that because, it's, the Massachusetts general law gives you that right. So it's, if you deny it, then the dump will happen. That's the problem in this. And that's why we're looking to you guys to at least do what the Board of Health should do under Massachusetts general law. And do it. And so that's why you're going to get the letter, which just says, we'd like to eventually have a judicatory hearing on this, and we would bring in experts at that point and talk. But I am absolutely glad, to put in the lineup of things, what you're talking about, that's not a problem with me. About
Okay,
doing
well,
a
I'm just,
preliminary.
okay, so everything that you just said seemed to me to be not just redundant, but the third time around. So all I want to make sure is that
All
when we
right.
have this very important session, which is, as I said, and I can't tell you this more earnestly, it's a privilege to be part of a process to educate the public about this. But I want to make sure we do it in a proper way, that we just don't go over the same thing in such a way that it's being redundant. It has to be effective. That's what it has to be. So I think that's, I'm looking forward to this. So I think that that's something that the board will look at now, and we'll look at this idea. But I want to make sure that we know that we're not looking at putting this into a hearing the next time. We're looking at an educational session, at which point we'll decide what else we want to do to go forward. Is that correct? Is that what we're being asked to do?
Yes, I think we need to do that.
Okay, good. Okay. All right. So just so long as we understand what we're being asked to do, that's the first thing I want to do, so that we can discuss this with a little bit of focus. Now, the second thing that I'd like to I just want to ask Mr. Jones to clarify one thing. It was a kind of an ambiguity that I'd like to clarify here. You were going to petition the Lee board about something, and then also we were going to be part of an educational process. Now, were you thinking of having a separate meeting with the Lee board in anticipation of this educational process? Is that what you were talking about?
Well, I think my feeling is, and Tim, you can correct me if I'm wrong. My feeling is that that the board would benefit from understanding what this hearing would be all about, so they would understand what we're trying to do, the law involved. Christabel would be there, and anybody else that Tim would want to be there for the formal hearing. But we want you to understand in advance of the hearing exactly what it's all about and what your powers are.
Okay, so I thought you said something specifically about the Lee board. And I wondered if if that was just maybe misspeaking, or you were going to petition the Lee board about something, or was it us that you were talking about?
You're going to receive that in the mail. What I read was partial, was drawn from the document that you're going to receive in the mail. So I think perhaps, and Tim, if you disagree, let me know. I think that what you should do is, when you get the documents that Tim has sent to you or is dropping off, that you review them, so you can see where we're coming from, and then we put our heads together and decide how to proceed from there.
Okay, thank you. So Would anybody on the board like to say something about this further or make a motion regarding this or anything else about it or ask questions of Mr. Gray or Mr. Jones?
I make a motion that we get an educational session on the next visit and then decide where to go from there.
I'll second that.
Jim, do you want to do a roll call vote on that?
Yeah, I'll do a roll call vote. Diane? Oh, you're on mute. Or raise your hand. Dr. Kenny,
Yes.
Dr. Schwerter,
Yes,
Dr. Blagg,
Yes.
Dr. Kearns,
Yes.
Dr. Westpizer,
Yes.
Carissa,
Yes.
Dr. Ladice. Am I missing anybody? I think that's it. So that motion passes. And Mr. Chair, I guess one of the things I'll have to figure out is, once you get the documentation, depending on where they land, I'll make sure each of the board member gets copies of that. And then I'll just have to coordinate with Mr. Jones and Tim on, coordination on when this presentation will happen, the format, and go from there. And I think an educational session is a good thing, but I just, and I know the media is on this call, and I know there's been some comments made, but I just want to clarify the dialogue that the Board of Health doesn't know what the roles or responsibilities are, or if they have legal jurisdiction on this. I think saying if the board decides not to do it, the dump will happen. I just want to make sure that kind of conversation is kind of clear. There's a lot of legal things that need to be sorted out, and I hope this presentation will shed some light on the powers if the board has jurisdictions, because I think we're not really sure what our jurisdiction is on that. And one of the towns over actually did some litigation, and then they had to dismiss it because they didn't have litigation legal support. So I want to make sure, whatever the board decides further down the road, that it's clear on what our path is, I think. That's all I have to say.
All right, thank you, Jim. Okay, so let's see, the next item on the agenda is the Sharps. Jim, do you want to discuss that?
Not really, but we have Jane Smith. So it's for the board to know, Jane Smith is our shared services coordinator and a registered sanitarian that's helping us do a lot of the Southern Berkshire Public Health Collaborative, that she's doing some of the Tri-Town work, but she spent a lot of energy regarding Sharp. So I'll just turn it over to Jane first, and I can answer questions if the board has any.
Jane?
Thank you, Dr. Kenny. Thank you, Jim. Jane Smith, I am really excited about being part of the Southern Berkshire Public Health Collaborative and part of kind of the Tri-Town team as well. So one of the things that I've been working on is through the South County Opioid Working Group, which is a group that started, I actually was one of the original members about 5 years ago, and we're focusing on issues specific to opioids in South County. And so I'm coming to you today because one of our projects is really to increase access for people to have Sharps disposal, which for the longest time was very difficult for people that use Sharps for a variety of different reasons, including things like diabetes, can't go to the transfer station. So what do people do with those Sharps? Very slowly, there's been kind of a network forming of Sharps disposal, including the harm reduction van, which I think all 3 Tri-Town towns agreed to have in their town. But what we're looking to do is install 3 new Sharps disposal units. And one of them we would like to propose to be in the Tri-Town office. What this would be is we would purchase a kiosk. It looks a lot like a mailbox, right? And where you put your Sharps, a container with Sharps in them into a larger container, and then having a third party come and collect those Sharps as it fills up. So what we're proposing is to have an indoor kiosk right inside the door of Tri-Town Health Department, and also provide the smaller containers to people as needed. And there's a lot of funding coming down the pike, so we believe that we can do this at very little cost to the towns and really provide a valuable service to Tri-Town and other towns in Southern Berkshire County. The other two locations we're looking at is Alford and Great Barrington. So those are the two other locations. Right now, there's one in Sheffield, Egremont, and then also through Fairview Hospital has some different spots that people can drop off sharps. So that's my ask of the board. And so I don't know what that process would look like. And after we talk about this, I'm also happy to talk about any other initiatives that we're doing for the opioids. We have a lot of exciting things going on in Southern Berkshire County. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Would anybody like to make a comment about this? Jim, does this sound feasible from the point of view of the logistics of the working of the Tri-Town offices?
I think so, yeah. I mean, with Jay and I were speaking about having an exterior outdoor kiosk versus like an interior. An exterior one comes with pros and cons, and I think the interior one would probably be most beneficial. And, now that we have a robust nurse program where we're going to probably have sharps anyway from flu clinics, it would probably make the most sense. A few years ago, we looked at something similar, and I just didn't think there was a lot of momentum. We were contracting out to the VNA. There were concerns about people just leaving bags of sharps sitting outside, needle stick. But I think there's a opportunity here to provide additional resources to those that need it. We get calls all the time about dropping off sharps, and based on the cost factor that Jane and I discussed, it really falls within the Tri-Town operating budget. It's minimal at best. And if we can find some sustainable funding on top of that, will really make things even better. And so there's not only the kiosk issue. Jane, did you want to talk about the mail order thing we talked about on top of that, if you wanted to? But I don't know if the board needs a formal vote on this, but I would entertain that if you're interested in allowing that to happen, and we'll make it happen.
Yeah. If I could ask, what hours of the day or particularly during the week would this be available for drop off?
So Tri-Town office hours are 8 to 4, Monday through Friday.
Okay, so it's a rather limited time if you're, particularly if you're dealing with people using drugs.
Yes.
Does a drop box kind of idea that would be inside, like a mailbox kind of thing, does that work? Is that a feasible idea, Jane?
Yes, actually, that's what these kiosks are. It's just like a mailbox where it goes in. And there are outdoor kiosks available as well that are weatherproof. I think it's just a preference on, what works. One of the ideas that Jim and I spoke about today was actually buying a kiosk that could go outdoors, so that we could be flexible to the needs of the community. But to start indoors, see how it goes, and then if there is a demand for outdoor kiosks, that we would already have the right kiosk, so we wouldn't have to purchase another one. So that was something that was kind of thrown around today as well.
Yeah, and Dr. Blagg, I think my hope is to start small and work our way up. Get the messaging out there that it's indoors. The Tri-Town Neroli building lends itself to some challenges. Right outside the main doors where they snow blow, and you would have to move the kiosk. There's no place to put it there. Then there's behind the building where the garbage is. We don't want people just to drop random things out back without people looking. It's also dark. Then on the opposite side of the building, it's where the food pantry direct access is. So it's not that we're against an exterior one to expand the hours. It's sort of like, let's start small in the interior, because there's talk further down the road that there may be a shared municipal safety building somewhere in Lee down the road, hopefully, and that would be the ideal spot. But right now, it's the way the Rowley building is set up. It's just, there's complications on throwing one outdoors.
How would this be advertised to the public?
Well, we're doing some other types of things that we're going to be doing outreach, as including, as Jim had alluded to, we're really pushing safe drug disposal, so safe prescription disposal, including having free mailers come back, be available to residents. And also there's some at-home disposal solution that you can put in with your medications and throw away in your normal municipal solid waste. So it's part of a larger framework of services that we're doing around harm reduction, around opioids and other prescription drugs that can be misused. So there's going to be a variety of ways, and we have quite an extensive network in South County of groups that are together, and so we advertise each other's things. So I would think that probably we would have a news flash about it. We would probably have invite the press to talk about this sort of thing, and it would likely be in collaboration with the other two sites as well. The thing that we wanted to stay really keenly aware of is making sure we're rolling it out right. So like making sure that the directions on how to properly dispose of sharps are readily available both online and at the site. Make sure that the proper sharps disposal containers are readily available to residents. Again, so that some of the hangups that could happen with improper needle disposal will not be a factor, and then we can also then apply that to other towns as well.
Diane?
Can I ask about years ago when DA Capeless was in office, there was a yearly and sometimes a biannual medication roundup.
Yeah.
At that point, I know Lennox has got a medication kiosk inside the police station. Do all of the towns have it? Does Lee and Stockbridge have that in their police departments?
They do, and in fact, February
That's a 24/7.
Yeah, February 20th was National Drug Roundup Day, and we did do a social media push for all of the South County locations. We took out ads in newspapers, so it's part of this. But yes, it's Tri-Town's lucky that you have 3 24/7s, and not that Great Barrington is part of Tri-Town, but they also for a while had a Sharps kiosk. But because of, they just were concerned about like needle sticks and whatnot. And so that's why we feel like having it at the health department where we can do education and outreach would be a better place to have that. But yes, you do have 3 police departments that have 24/7. What we're finding is that there is a component of people that are using that do have in their possession narcotics that don't necessarily want to interface with the police. So what we're trying to do is we're developing a conversation guide with prescribers. So primarily like ER, dental, some day surgery, and it's a conversation guide that's kind of gives people a plan for their medication. And I know BHS already has a contract, but this is a little bit different. We tried it out at Dr. Vinaglu's a few years ago before COVID and got great results with it. So we're trying to establish these many systems of getting rid of prescription drugs to include as part of that effort.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Jane. Would anybody like to make a motion regarding her request?
I'd make a motion that.
I'll second. I'll second.
Can we have a roll call vote?
So just point of order, Mr. Chair, Diane, can you make the full motion, then we'll get the second.
Thank you. I make the motion that we move forward with the Sharps container being brought into Tri-Town in whatever shape and form is necessary.
And I'll
Dr.
second
Kerr?
it.
There you go. Awesome, thank you. Diane, roll call.
Yes.
Dr. Kenny,
Yes.
Dr. Schwerner,
yes,
Dr. Blagg, Dr. Kearns,
Yes,
Dr. Westpizer,
Yes.
Carissa,
Yes.
Joanne,
Yes.
Dr. Lidice.
Yes.
I think that's everybody. Motion passes.
Thank
Okay,
you so much.
Jane. Thank you very much. Okay, Jim, do you want to go over the proposed changes to the tobacco regulations that I think you've distributed to everybody?
Yeah, this is.
Times.
Yeah, and since we, and I was thinking, Mr. Chair, today, since we have Dr. Lidice who's new to the board, what I'm trying to accomplish is to get to a point where the board can approve the amendments and then go to a public hearing to update our regulations. And I think what I'll just ask for tonight, rather than getting into the weeds of the changes, if the board can, when they get around to it, hopefully within the next month or so, review the proposed amendments to the local regulations, and then we'll reconvene one more time and actually spend some time on the amended changes. So then we can approve the changes and then go to a public hearing. So basically where we're at is Tri-Town has local tobacco regulations that are more stringent than the state, but the state law was passed a couple of years ago. So we have to reconcile our local and state regulations into one document. The big difference is there's a couple major policy changes for the board to consider, and I'll just very quickly explain them. So when you read the changes in green, you'll get an understanding. One of the changes, for example, is the Tri-Town boards actually cap the number of tobacco permits available in our towns. There's only so many in Stockbridge, there's only so many in Lee, there's only so many in Lenox. But if a store closes, another store can capture an available permit. One policy change would be, does the board want to retire those said permits? So over time, we're reducing the number of tobacco retailers in our municipality. So that's one conceptual idea that we would want to look at. The second piece is does the board want to restrict and not allow standalone smoking bars in our 3 towns? Meaning someone could actually pull a permit, open up a legit smoking bar, and then just be allowed to do that. A lot of municipalities have decided to not allow that to happen, but that would be a policy change on our end. I will tell you, there's only about 24 smoking bars in the state. I think with the tobacco law changes, there seemed to be this thought where tons of these smoking bars would be opening up all across the state, but we haven't seen that kind of sprawl yet. But I would rather have the board think about that and hopefully pass that, rather than get into a situation where we get an applicant with a mixed retail with apartments where people are smoking in a building with obvious issues with secondhand smoke. And the third piece is related to restricting non-tobacco related flavors in retail stores. There's a lot of CBD products coming out. There's a lot of hemp products coming out, and they're all flavored. And, there's evidence out there that it attracts young people. So those are the 3 major issues. There's some smaller issues. So when you get bored, when it's 85 out and sunny and you want to read tobacco regulations, make some notes. And I think what I would like to see is, I would probably think we're going to meet in the next month or 2 anyway. And this presentation on the PCBs, I would maybe take that up at that meeting and spend a little bit of time on that, so we can finalize a draft for the fall. But so I'm not asking for a motion tonight.
Jim, I have a question.
Sure.
You said we should be in line with the state regulations as far as a business going, or a facility going out of business and retiring that permit. Is that what the state currently recommends?
No, well, no, so that's a local policy. There's
Local. Okay.
There's two different things going on. There's all these state requirements that we're folding into our local regs, but then there's some local policy decisions. And
Okay.
actually, John, the changes in green that you'll see
Yeah.
are local policy
Okay.
ideas. Everything else that's not highlighted is all state law.
I see.
So when you review the green, those are local decisions the boards will have to make.
Okay.
Good question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jim. You want to give us some Tri-Town Health Department updates now?
Not really. I think we've discovered, budget's in good shape. Town meetings are over. We're just kind of, Zach and I are working hard to get across the finish line for the end of the fiscal year reporting and closeouts. The Southern Berkshire Collaborative, I do send updates on that. The COVID, we're in the medium now for COVID. The numbers are coming down. We're not out of it completely, but it's, I don't really, Zach, unless you have anything earth shattering to share, it's just, everything's in good shape. I want to thank Carissa for going to Leetown meeting with me, to support the Tri-Town budget. I want to welcome Dr. Lidice, Stockbridge Board of Health, for being elected to the Stockbridge Board. And I think we're in good shape. It's just really trying to get an understanding what the role is for the Tri-Town boards with related to that previous agenda item is what I'm trying to understand.
Okay, so any questions about the Tri-Town updates? I'd just like to add in that the Austin Riggs has responded to a request that Tri-Town made, and we'll be having a forum on Saturday, July the 9th at 9 a.m. And basically this will be at Eden Hill. At the Marian Fathers have donated an outdoor amphitheater that we can use there, and the Riggs people will host the forum, and it will basically be to try to reconcile the idea that people still have a certain amount of stress related to the disease that we're still dealing with. So I urge everybody to get the word out to your constituents if you think this is going to be something that will be helpful to them. Now, the next item is, does anybody have any questions about any of that? Okay, the next item, I'm sorry. The next item is the opioid settlement funds, Jim.
Yeah, and Diane and Dr. Schwerner are on the Southern Berkshire Collaborative Governing Board for South County. And what's happening with this is it's really just an update. So there's significant funding coming down the pike for the next 15 years where each municipality is going to be allocated a certain amount of opioid settlement funds. And there's criteria on how to spend that. For example, Alfred may get $100. Lee may get $35,000 the first year. And so State Rep Smitty Pignatelli came to the collaborative, which we're part of, to see if there's a willingness for all of South County to maybe pool some of those opioid settlement resources to make sure that's going to either programming, education, the youth, and those that were affected with the opioid crisis. And so we've been engaging with some of the Southern Berkshire communities, also working with the Rural Recovery Center. And we're not really sure where we're at, but I just want the Tri-Town boards to be aware that there is some dialogue to see if there's a willingness to maybe pool these resources together. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what the role of us would be, but if we can maybe advocate to have this funding go to an organization or whatever programming that will yield the best results, I think we have an opportunity to advocate as public health officials to see if there's a willingness to do that. That's really all I have. We're still trying to sort out what that looks like, if at all, is an opportunity.
So will you keep us updated about that, Jim?
I will.
Any questions? Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So move.
Any seconds?
I'll second.
Roll call, Diane,
Yes.
Dr. Kenny,
Yes.
Dr. Schwerner,
yes.
Dr. Blagg,
Yes.
Dr. Kearns,
Yes.
Dr. Westphizer,
Yes.
Carissa,
Yes.
Joanne,
Yes.
Dr. Ludice.
Yes.
Getting good at this. Motion passes.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, thank you.